Good evening for most of you all, everyone, and thanks for being with us on our briefing on Taiwan. I am Jim Hake, the founder and CEO at Spirit of America, and I'm very happy to see so many of our supporters, including members of our board, on the call tonight. We can't do what we do without you, so thanks for joining us in this way as well. As background, for those of you who don't know us, Spirit of America is a privately funded 501c3 nonprofit, and we work alongside America's troops all over the world and provide private assistance to fill the gaps between what is needed and what government can do to help defend freedom and advance freedom and democracy in the world, save lives, and help those who are partners and friends of the United States. And we're going to be hearing from one of the very best partners America has in the world now this evening. So we've at Spirit America have created a way to harness the power of the American people and apply it at the point of need. And it works. The Wall Street Journal calls us a coalition of the can-do. And if you ever look around and wonder, gee, I think America ought to be able to do better in how it operates in the world, that's exactly what we bring to the table at Spirit of America. So right now, helping Taiwan and Ukraine are our two main efforts, and we've been active in Taiwan for 3 years. Our focus in Taiwan is supporting a whole of society resilience, helping Taiwan be a stronger, more resilient democracy. For example, we're supporting civil society organizations in Taiwan, like Forward Alliance, that you're going to hear a lot about tonight, organizations who are mobilizing and training Taiwanese civilians in emergency preparedness. And so our goal with all that is over the next couple of years is to help mobilize and train 1 million Taiwanese to build a stronger, more resilient Taiwan. I'm going to introduce our two main guests here tonight in just a moment, but a housekeeping note. So if you have any questions, please submit them via that Q&A button on your Zoom toolbar. We love to hear from you, so please, anything that comes to mind, any questions, please ask, and we'll do our best to get to them. So first, we have with us tonight Enoch Wu, who leads the organization Forward Alliance in Taiwan, and Joshua Brandon. Josh is there he is. Josh is our Spirit America's regional director for the Asia Pacific region, and has led our efforts in Taiwan for the last few years. So we also call him JB. So JB, could you give everyone a bit of an overview of what y'all have been doing and why in the last few years in Taiwan?
Sure, Jen. And first, I'd like to thank all our supporters and partners for joining us from across the globe. From my entire team in Asia Pacific, we really value your support. It allows us to do the work that we can do. So our efforts in Taiwan began 3 years ago to work with both civil society and government as part of a whole of society approach to make Taiwan more resilient to potential man-made and natural disasters. Our focus to date has been to mobilize Taiwanese society to be prepared for any disaster. The work involves recruiting and training over 20,000 Taiwanese civilians and first responders, and working with 100 civil society organizations in disaster preparedness, drone piloting, medical training, and crisis communication. And I think it's important to note that this is all while working together with the Taiwanese government. I'd to say that while many folks are talking about how to make Taiwan more resilient, or even to define what a whole of society approach looks like, I think you're going to leave today's call understanding how Spirit of America and more ends, especially our partners, are actually doing it. Thanks, Jim.
Great. And I have a few questions we're going to kick off for Enoch in just a second, but you two gentlemen have been working together for several years now. So introduce Enoch for everyone that's with us tonight.
Sure, it's hard to sum up Enoch, but I'll give it a try. So Enoch served on Taiwan's National Security Council from 2017 to 2019. And there he was responsible for homeland security and critical infrastructure protection. He's also a reserve non-commissioned officer in Taiwan in the Taiwanese Army Special Forces Command. And in 2022, he was named one of the 100 Next, and that's Time Magazine's annual list of global leaders. Most recently, he was selected as a member of President Lai's Whole Society Resilience Committee, representing a growing and dynamic civil society movement in support of national resilience in Taiwan. Most importantly, he's the founder of one of our flagship partners, Ford Alliance, which he started to mobilize Taiwanese civilians for emergency response training and preparedness needed in the event of a crisis. He serves as our executive director, and I think most importantly, he's a close partner and close friend of mine and the organization. You know,
Enoch, thanks for joining us. Great to have you with us. And, well, anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me here. It's great to see you. Great to see JB and the rest of the team.
So, as you know, we had this session scheduled a little while back, but it was interrupted very understandably by a typhoon. And could you tell us a little bit about the typhoon, how it affected Taiwan, and how people in Taiwan responded and fared in that crisis?
Absolutely. Thank you. You're right, Jim. This call was postponed due to the typhoon, and Taiwan is a disaster-prone country. When folks ask me about Taiwan, what it's like, as we all know, it's a vibrant democracy of 24 million citizens, but also, part of our DNA, in addition to democratic values, is disasters. It's we have typhoons, we have earthquakes, and like all of you around the world, we are facing consequences, and we're seeing the real impact of extreme weathers as well, effects of climate change, and so all of that exacerbates the risk environment that we face. Now, this is something we all grow up with. And so on this most recent typhoon, communities around the country were affected. Some more so than others. One of the communities that we worked with, their roads was cut off, so they were without resupply for quite a few days. And so these are things that we deal with on a regular basis. It's part of our DNA. But happy to report that, with each and every disaster, with each and every crisis, we learn, we get better, we train, and we're better prepared. And if I may just say, I know it's been several months now, but we obviously have been following very closely the impact of the hurricanes that hit several parts of the United States, and we try to do what we can. We want to help where we can, but most importantly, our thoughts are always with the families affected.
Yeah, well, thank you, Enoch. A number of people very close to Spirit of America had their lives totally disrupted. So we and even a greater number who are not, we don't know. But thank you for mentioning that. How did the Ford Alliance team and the training that you've been doing play a role, if at all, in the response to the typhoon?
Yeah, all of our training, as JV alluded to earlier, it centers around emergency response. It centers around saving lives in crises. And we recognize from early on that that disasters, regardless of the cause, it may be man-made, it may be natural, the impacts are usually often the same. And so we're dealing with interrupted services, we're dealing with critical infrastructure that's affected. Most importantly, as you mentioned, Jim, we're dealing with people whose lives are turned upside down. And so the training we provide covers everything that help communities respond to that type of scenario. It's basic medical skills, it's search and rescue, it's survival, it's communication, it's understanding, it's learning how to stand up a shelter and manage it safely. It's all of that that make communities more resilient. And I think with every typhoon, we're reminded of how important it is. With the most recent typhoon, our instructors and our volunteers have been deployed. And something that we might talk about later is, we work with a very professional group of first responder instructor volunteers who take time out of their schedules to train more civilians, because we all realize and we all understand that it's not enough to just have professional first responders. In Taiwan, we have approximately 16,000 firefighters and paramedics. They're very professional, they're very capable, and they're very dedicated. The problem is, and the challenge is, there isn't enough of them in a country of 24 million citizens. 16,000 is not even 1 in 1,000, right? So just think about that service ratio: one first responder to 1,500 civilians, right? I think that ratio, that number tells you how important it is for every individual, every citizen, to pick up the skills, to know how to keep themselves safe, to know how to protect their families, and to know to help their communities. We believe that resilience, it's a word that we hear often, more and more often these days, but the resilience has to be local. Resilience starts with every individual knowing the basics, having a sense of awareness of their surroundings, and knowing how to take action safely. And from there, we have families that are more secure, and from there we have neighbors who can help each other. It's impossible to separate resilience from what happens at the individual and the local level, and that's the work we're trying to do.
That's the point about resilience beginning with the individual is a profound, simple but profound point. So I thank you. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that in a moment. But in addition to the natural disasters, of course, you all have some other worries in Taiwan. Could you talk a little bit about those?
Absolutely. So disasters, regardless of natural or man-made, and Jim, you're talking about one of the most potentially most impactful, most consequential threats that we do face on the other side of the Taiwan Strait. This reality, geopolitical reality, existential threat, is something that every Taiwanese grows up with, just like the typhoons and earthquakes we face. Now, again, we're talking about different causes and different levels of impact, but really we need to be thinking about these threats in the same terms of preparedness. Without the same level of preparedness, without the resilience that starts at the local level, it's impossible to build a nation that can sustain, that can endure any type of hardship, whether it's a natural disaster or conflict. And so, some of the conflicts, some of the threats, we can do our best to mitigate. Some we can't. For example, we can't control when the next typhoon hits, but we can work on risk reduction. We can work on mitigation. We can work on reducing the vulnerabilities that we face. Now, on the other threats, some of the other threats, there's more that we can do, and that an active intervention, active preparedness can maybe help us offset the crisis. And here we're talking about conflict, right? Man-made conflict. We don't need to rehash the threat that's posed by the CCP and the PLA on Taiwan. I think everyone on this call is tracking that. But I think what is often missed in discussions about Taiwan's defenses and Taiwan's resilience and Taiwan's ability to deter conflict is the preparedness of the entire nation, is the preparedness of civilians at the individual, or I should say, starting at the individual level. Forward Alliance was founded 4.5 years ago. We're a civic organization, and really that's a fancy way of saying we're a volunteer organization. We believe everyone, every civilian, every citizen has a role to play in making our country a safer place, making our country safer from the effects of typhoons and earthquakes, but certainly making our country safer from the threat of war as well. We believe that when civilians take part to serve each other, to serve their community, it sends a very strong signal that the country is united, that the country is unified to face any type of threat and challenge. I think that's a very important intangible in the deterrence equation that is often overlooked in discussions about Taiwan. And so our goal here, beyond emergency response, although the emergency response is very important, beyond the skills that we're training, even though these skills are absolutely tangible and essential, is to create programs where civilians and citizens can serve, right? It is essentially a civil society-led national service that we're aiming to stand up. We think it is important for democracy, and we think it is especially important for democracy under threat.
And with the citizens that you've trained, this is a hard thing to measure. It's a hard thing to assess, but has it affected, I'll say, the psychology of the people who have been involved? Have you been able to see if there's increased confidence in just them being part of Taiwan? I'm not quite sure if that's the best way to ask the question, but what have you seen beyond these skills, is maybe a better way to put it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everyone who's had some level of scouts training, if we can, reach back to those to the distant memories, can probably relate to what Jim you just mentioned, and that is, more training, more preparedness builds confidence, and it builds confidence, and it gives us the courage, and really it reinforces the willingness for us to reach out and take action when it counts and when it's required. We've trained north of 20,000 civilians, as JB mentioned earlier, and we've trained these civilians around the country. And what we're seeing is the ripple effect of that training early on when we started working together, in giving folks this avenue to serve and giving folks an opportunity to do something to help their communities. We were serving mostly walk-ins, if you remember, essentially members of the general public who signed up maybe on their own, maybe with a friend, maybe with their spouses. And over time, we saw a change taking place. We saw that these civilians and citizens went back and shared our work and shared what they did with their organization, with their workplace, with their colleagues, and maybe with their social clubs. And more over the last few years, organizations that heard about our work approached us and talked about training for the entire team. Okay, and to the point where today, as of today, we don't do any public walk-in trainings anymore, because all of our time, all of our resources are taken up exclusively by these organizations that reached out for training. Organizations like schools, from elementary school all the way up to universities, faith-based organizations, local charities and nonprofits that are actually serving their communities day in and day out, reaching out to us saying, we want to do more. In addition to what we do, we want to be prepared for the worst case scenario. In case of a disaster, we want to continue to help. Therefore, we want more training. And these are organizations that maybe operate soup kitchens on a regular basis, maybe serve local vulnerable populations. And they're saying to themselves, that's not enough, we want to do more. These are organizations like local businesses. Just think about what that says. Business managers, founders of companies saying, I'm going to set aside business hours for my team to take on this type of training. That seems completely removed from our core business. But really what they're saying is, we want to invest in our community, we want to invest in our staff, and we want to be a constructive part of the community. And so if you just look at how far we've come over the last few years, from training individuals to now individuals sharing our work, to now their organizations approaching us, to the point where we are now serving organizations in communities on an exclusive basis. I think that tells the story of the change that we're seeing. Currently, we engage with over 100 organizations on a regular basis, providing everything from basic training to some of our more advanced modules. Basic training like stop the bleed, like field medicine, to advanced training like shelter management, to something even more fun like drone operation, anything and everything in between. So we're very encouraged by the trend that we see, by this movement that we're all part of, and we think it really sets a solid foundation for a national service program that I know we're all aiming for. Again, it builds citizenship, it unifies society, brings people closer together. It counters some of the division and polarization that we see around the world. And importantly, this is our country, this is our home. Everyone has not just the obligation, but the right to take part. And that really drives everything we do.
That's an awesome rundown and just a huge success and progress. The leverage, as you know, it's what you just spoke to. The leverage that is associated with getting businesses and organizations that have their own teams, their own people, their own spheres of influence. The leverage associated with that is a huge success. So congratulations on that. I want to ask you quickly, and I know you won't take the question the wrong way because you know how strongly we at Spirit of America feel about Taiwan and the importance of having a democratic, a thriving democracy in the Asia Pacific region, the way that Taiwan is. But for, say, not for Spirit of America personnel, but for anyone else listening, why do you think Americans should care about Taiwan?
Yeah, you know, I've heard, we've heard several arguments, and when folks have posed that question, folks have talked about the importance of Taiwan in global trade. We've talked about the importance of stability in this part of the world. Folks have talked about the essential role Taiwan plays in the high-tech supply chain. I think that is all right. That is all correct. That is all relevant. But really, ultimately, I think people need to understand that Taiwan as a democracy, just like you, we are working through on a daily basis challenges and hurdles. We have our internal friction. We have areas where we fall short. But what's important is because we're a democracy, we're able to look at our shortcomings. We're able to look at where we need to do better, and we're able to harness civil society, leverage civil society, and be a better country. I think Taiwan may be, Taiwan is on the other side of the world from the U.S. I think we're almost exactly 12 hours off from where you're sitting now, Jim. But in many ways, we're fighting the same fight. We're fighting the same fight democratically. We're fighting the same fight internationally, diplomatically. Taiwan faces. Earlier, you asked about the man-made threat that we deal with, right? The national security challenge in the more conventional sense. That threat from the Chinese Communist Party is not a Taiwan problem. Unfortunately, I think over the past 20 plus years, the entire world wished it was a Taiwan problem only, and wished that as long as Taiwan could deal with it, as long as Taiwan could keep situations stable, maintain the status quo, very vague term, everything would be better, right? We could all be better off. We could all just focus on trade, focus on market access, focus on everything else. But what I think all of us have learned over the last 20 odd years is that it was wishful thinking. Everything that Taiwan faces, every single challenge that Taiwan faces, you face on your side of the world as well. We started this call talking about the effects of climate change and extreme weathers. But it's much more than that. We talked about democratic challenges. We both had an election this year. And seeing how democracy, if we don't work on it, has a flip side of potentially tearing us apart. And we all know we must do better there. But there's also another huge challenge, which is the national security threat that we face. The espionage, the intellectual property theft, the intelligence threats, the foreign interference, everything that Taiwan faces already now is happening on your soils as well. Our government data is being stolen by the same intelligence agencies, by the same spies that are breaching your networks. Our critical infrastructures are under attack by the same actors that are attacking your networks. our military assets, our military forces face the same challenges as yours. And so, I think it's that realization forces us to face these challenges together. We can decide not to and go our own way for sure, but I think we've all learned from history that we're stronger when we work together, and we do better when we stand together. And so I think that's a very very long answer to what Jim, you asked a very simple question, but there's so much packed into this. I can't think of another country where our fates are so intertwined, and I think it would be foolish to not care about each other both ways.
That's extraordinarily well said. And so I have to share this comment. It's not really a question that came in before you just said the importance of when we stand together. And it's Stephen from Jacksonville Beach, Florida, who speaks to 3 hurricanes there, extreme weather events, and the importance of volunteers there. And he says their theme song down in Jacksonville is When We Stand Together. So thanks for sharing that, Stephen. Thank you, Enoch. So, JB, I know we only have a couple of minutes left. Do we have, if you want to share any of the images that we have, but I'm just going to ask you, to pile on, add to all that Enoch just said in whatever way you would like, please.
Sure. I think really, describing what Spirit of America has done alongside Foreign Alliance, over the past couple of years and where we're going very briefly. And so as we said, we started work in October of 2021, and our mission there has been the same, and it's been simple, and to support national resilience through a whole society approach. I think the not so secret sauce to our approach is working through civil society. Very quickly, I think it's also important to understand how we do it as well as what we do. And I think one of the things SOA does really well is take a venture approach to international assistance. And so in this case, and Enoch's a great example, we see got entrepreneurs who are at the point of a problem through a lack of funding, or really my personal favorite, who have a radical idea that needs to be tested and scaled. And then we eschew the typical funder funding relationship and work alongside them to design, test, and then, ultimately, hopefully scale that idea with private or government funding. As I said, our flagship effort in Taiwan is with Foreign Alliance, and I think he's done a wonderful job of demonstrating the progress that he's had there. But our work also includes supporting and training organization of civilian OSINT network through Kuma Academy, and publishing a civilian-led civil defense guide and online content really aimed at the average on-the-street person through our partners Watch Out. Everything has to be connected to government. And so we're working with government to accelerate key capabilities. Our partnership with the National Fire Agency, where we've helped create pilot their Taiwan Civilian Emergency Response Team program, or we launched the first national tactical emergency casualty care program there with the government as well. Another thing I'd like to highlight, it's something that we really understand, that the regional approach is critical to Taiwan. We've really expanded our work in 24 and 25 to include programs in the Philippines and other partner countries. And I think what's really critical here is that it includes two-way technical expertise exchange and network building with civil society and other frontline democracies globally. But I'm happy to answer any specific questions about the programs, but thanks, Jim.
That's great, JB. Thank you. And everyone, we're just at about time here, so I'll wrap it up for us. And it's no secret that America and those who are committed to freedom and democracy in the world, that there are a lot of challenges that we all face. And sometimes it's you might think it's hard to be optimistic, but I'd like to leave with one reason for optimism that will start with a little bit of the challenge, but then the optimistic part. So one of our board members, General Joe Dunford, retired General Joe Dunford, Marine General, who was also the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said, without the American people involved, it's like we're fighting with one arm tied behind our back. And when you think about, fighting, it's not always a military fight. Maybe it's more of a competition, but we're fighting for what America stands for. There's no doubt about that. And Enoch gave a great rundown on it. So when you think about fighting with an arm tied behind your back, you go, yeah, that kind of makes sense. When you really look at it, it is a profoundly it's not a way to prevail. It's not a way to win, that's for sure. Maybe at best you can defend yourself for a certain period of time. So what we do at Spirit of America by harnessing the power of the American people in ways that help our partners and allies and support national security against these challenges, well, we bring the other arm into the game. And so now we can fight or we compete with both arms. And it's a game-changing thing that is a much better way for America to operate in the world. And so the optimistic part is we have barely begun to tap into that power of the American people to do these things around the world that need to be done. We are like at less than 1% of the potential impact of that. And so, we look ahead and we go, yeah, there are great challenges, but we've barely begun to do the best we can as a country. And the best we can involves helping amazing partners like Enoch Wu and Forward Alliance. So everybody, thanks for your support. Thank you for being with us tonight. Please join us at spiritofamerica.org. Join our mailing list. Make a gift. Whatever you want to do, but we'd love to have you as part of our coalition that can do. Enoch, thank you. JB, thank you. And thanks everybody else for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Enoch.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, JB. Thanks, everyone.